because they had a sojourn that minimally started in Babylon that made its way all the way to Egypt, and then from Egypt to the notorious Israel state that we're dealing with in the news today. That was 800 miles one way, and then circuitously about another 50 miles back into Palestine. And so the Hebrew people would have been called strangers in Egypt, okay, and then pilgrims from Egypt to Palestine. Now, the difference between a stranger and a pilgrim is that a stranger can be in a city permanently, though not a citizen. A pilgrim is passing through. To be a pilgrim is to be a person who is in a city as a stranger, but you have no intentions on staying there. Does that make some sense? Right. So you're on a journey, and this is a concept for the Bible believer that is replete through the scriptures. We're not here to stay. That's a mindset. That's an understanding. The believer does not own this physical material system of a world network as his final abode. We are passing through. This is a mindset. And so when John Bunyan uses the term pilgrim here, he's talking about people who are on a what? Journey. Right. And then he uses the word progress. The pilgrim's progress. The idea of progress is making passage through this life because you are destined for another place. Progression is a transient verb, a transient expression that means you are on the move. It does have a rich theological connotation. Progress also will imply development. As we would use in academic terms, you are making what? Progress. So I want you to capture it not so much in a linear material way. I want you to think about the pilgrim being clear that this isn't his home, but also being clear that he is progressing in his journey where he is to go. Okay, does that make some sense? Now, I want to talk to you about three extremely important categories around being a pilgrim in your progress. And that is, the pilgrim's progress really describes a journey theologically that constitutes three main pillars of doctrine. So for those of you who know, the first pillar of doctrine is what we call justification. And that's important to capture because most Christians don't know how to explain it, even if they don't know how to say it. Justification. Justification is a critical component to the pilgrim's progress because justification precedes, I'm going to talk about that in a moment, sanctification. Sanctification. Now, sanctification is really going to be our big topic, what it means to be sanctified. Sanctification has as its progressive conclusion, what, saints? Glorification. Say it like you meant it. What is it? Glorification. It's important to know that. Now, when we talk about justification, sanctification, glorification, we are talking about a progression of an event. A progression of an event. And this is the word that I want you to capture now. It's called a sequence of events. A sequence of events. Meaning, glorification does not happen without sanctification. And sanctification does not happen without what? Justification is not disassociated, disconnected from, or separated from sanctification. In order to be sanctified, you must first be what? Right. And sanctification leads to what? So that it can be easily understood that sanctification is really glorification begun. Sanctification is glorification begun. And if we break our word sanctification down, we have the word saint. Every believer is a what? Saint. That means you're set apart for a special relationship that leads to a special experience, that leads to a special conclusion. And that special conclusion is a state of glorification. Now, these are simple concepts. They're not hard to understand It's important for you to know that. And really, as we talk more about the Pilgrim's Progress for about 6 months, we're really going to be largely dealing with sanctification leading to glorification, because justification here, this work actually precedes what we call the event. Precedes the event, if you can spell that. Pilgrim's Progress is a consequence of justification. Pilgrim's Progress is not itself justification. Justification precedes. You know what precede means? It goes before. It's a precedent. It's an antecedent. This is the other word that you can use. When we talk about a Pilgrim's Progress, what we are talking about is an antecedent that actually drives or catapults us into a process of sanctification. This is the way your outline lays it out, and I want to unpack it more theologically. The journey of the pilgrim is the sinner being convinced to come to Christ. That's your outline. The journey of the pilgrim is the sinner being convinced to come to Christ. Did that make some sense? All right, I'm getting ready to walk through that, and this is extremely important for you to know. When we're talking about a journey is the consequence of a compelling. You're being motivated by something. You're being driven by something. There's something driving you. And that thing that's driving you is what is called an antecedent. And the antecedent drive of the Christian or the pilgrim or the sinner more properly that moves them towards Christ is that God does something in the work of justification that prepares the sinner to find his or her need to pursue Christ. And that is the work of justification. So what you need to know are two words theologically, and that those two words are, one, accomplished, and then the other word is applied. Applied. When we talk about the Pilgrim's Progress, we're not talking about salvation accomplished. We're talking about salvation what? Applied. When you're talking about the pilgrim getting up and being motivated, being driven by whatever, we'll talk about that, to come to Christ, that's not the gospel accomplished. The gospel doesn't have anything to do with you in its accomplishments. The gospel in its accomplishments precedes you. It's way before you. So when we talk about the accomplishments of the gospel, we are talking about the accomplishment of Christ's death in your behalf. Are you guys keeping up with me? So when we're talking about the accomplishment of Christ's death, we're talking about the antecedent of an application that moves you into an experience of salvation. That comes home now, right? Right. And that is extremely important as a theological point. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that theologically so that you can see. Now, how many of you guys have started on the Pilgrim's Progress with me? All right. So the rest of you, you probably didn't know. If you do know and you haven't, this is a real good indicator of your character. You need to know this because this is a serious study. If you've never read the Pilgrim's Progress before, you are shortchanging yourself. So if you're going to be keeping up with me from week to week to week, but you're just refusing to watch it, to listen to it, because if you listen to it, it's only about 8 hours. There are 10 segments, 10 stages in the Pilgrim's Progress. I've cut them down theologically into 4 categories of 7, which will make our study, like I said, somewhat blocked off in terms of major events. But it's only 8 hours of listening. So for people that are serious about getting an overarching view of what salvation is from justification to glory, this will help you. So when I talk about what happened to Jesus as the substitute for sinners and the assumption of a human nature and the living of a perfect life and dying on Calvary's tree and him saying it is what? That's redemption accomplished. That has nothing to do with you. That precedes you. That goes before you. It's antecedent to you. Here's another theological term you can take because it's going to help you. It's called prevenient. Prevenient. This is a theological category of thought that helps us understand how God works before he actually meets us in our need. Prevenient. And if you're listening carefully to your Bible, this is how God almost always works. His plans are from eternity past.